The day the stars went silent, the alarm was not screaming. That was the first thing Marcus Webb noticed when he opened his eyes. He had been on enough ships to know, when something goes wrong in space, alarms scream, lights flash red, people shout and run. But right now the ship was completely silent. Not the good kind of silent. The dead kind. Marcus sat up slowly. His head hurt. His mouth tasted like metal. He was lying on the cold floor of the ship's lower cargo level. He did not remember falling asleep there. He did not remember much at all from the last few hours. He was 34 years old, not a soldier, not a pilot, not a hero. He was a teacher, a simple human school teacher from a small city on Earth. And 3 months ago, the royal house of planet Valorn had hired him to do one job: teach their princess the human language, human history, and human ways of thinking. It had seemed like the easiest job in the galaxy. It was not. Marcus stood up carefully and looked around. The cargo level was dark. Only a few emergency lights were still working, casting a weak orange glow over the metal walls and stacked supply boxes. He could hear nothing above him. No footsteps, no voices, no engine hum. The engines were off. That was very bad. He moved to the small porthole in the wall and looked outside. He saw stars, but he also saw something else. 3 large ships were floating close to them. Dark, heavy ships with sharp edges and no lights. Ships that looked like they were built for only one purpose. Marcus had seen pictures of those ships before. Princess Kale had shown him once during one of their lessons. She had pulled up an image on her learning screen and said, in her careful, accented human English, "These are Vorkai ships, my tutor. You must never be near them." He had nodded and moved on to the next lesson. He was near them now. His legs moved before his brain finished thinking. He went up the first set of stairs quietly, staying low, one hand on the cold metal wall. He came to the main corridor and stopped. It was empty. He moved to the next corridor, also empty. Then he found the first body. It was one of the royal guards, a tall Valorn soldier in silver armor, lying face down on the floor. His armor was not cut or broken. He had been hit by a stun weapon, still breathing, but not waking up anytime soon. Then Marcus found another guard, and another, and another. 12 guards all on the floor, all stunned, all alive. The Vorkai raiders did not come here to kill. They came here to take something. Marcus already knew what. He ran. He went to the royal quarters on the upper level. The door was already open. The room inside was perfectly clean. No mess, no broken things, no signs of a fight. Princess Kale was not the kind of person who would go without a fight. That meant they had stunned her too before she even woke up. He stood in the middle of her empty room and looked at the small table near the window. Her learning tablet was still there. The screen was open to the last lesson they had done together. A chapter on human history about a great war, about soldiers who never gave up even when everything looked hopeless. He stared at that screen for a long moment. Then he turned around and walked out. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes searching every part of the ship. He was looking for 2 things: any other person who was awake and any way to call for help. He found neither. The communication room had been destroyed. Not roughly, very carefully. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing had removed 3 small parts from the main system. Without those parts, the communication board was just an expensive piece of metal. He sat down on the floor of the communication room and put his hands over his face. He was alone on a dead ship, somewhere far from any planet he knew. The most dangerous pirates in 12 star systems had just taken a royal princess, and he was a school teacher with no weapons, no ship of his own, and no plan. For about 90 seconds, Marcus Webb felt completely and totally finished. Then he stood up. He was a teacher, yes, but he was also human. And humans had one quality that most other species in the galaxy found very difficult to understand. They did not know when to stop. He went back to the cargo level. He searched every box, every corner, every locked case until he found what he was looking for. At the very back of the cargo level, behind a wall of heavy supply containers, was an old emergency pod. It was small. It was old. It smelled like rust and cold air. But it had power, and inside it, bolted to the wall, was a short-range distress beacon. Short range meant it could only reach ships within a few thousand kilometers, in the middle of empty space that was almost useless. Marcus turned it on. He held down the manual broadcast button and spoke clearly into the small microphone. He gave the ship's location. He gave the princess's name. He gave the name of the raiders who took her. Then he paused for just a second, and he said one more thing. "My name is Marcus Webb. I am a human teacher assigned to the Royal House of Valorn. I am going to get her back." He released the button. The little beacon blinked its orange light quietly into the darkness. Somewhere across the galaxy, a receiving station picked up the signal. A tired operator copied it down and sent it along the normal channels. Within an hour, it had reached military commanders, royal advisors, bounty hunters, and news stations. They all read it. Most of them laughed. A human teacher alone on a dead ship, no weapons, no backup, promising to go after the Vorkai raiders. It was, most of them agreed, the most foolish thing they had ever heard. But Marcus was already moving. He had found the emergency pod's small thruster system. It had just enough fuel to reach the nearest trading station, and at the nearest trading station he could find a ship, and if he could find a ship, he could follow the raiders, and if he could follow the raiders, well, he would figure out the rest when he got there. That was, after all, a very human way of doing things. The man they did not fear. The Vorkai commander's name was Drak Voss. He was 7 feet tall, covered in dark gray armor that he had never once taken off in battle. He had destroyed 14 ships, raided 43 colonies, and made the strongest military generals in the galaxy turn their ships around and fly the other way. He was not afraid of anything. So when one of his soldiers walked into his command room and told him that a human was coming after them, a human teacher, alone, in a broken emergency pod, Drak Voss did something he had not done in a very long time. He laughed. He laughed so hard that the soldiers standing near him started laughing too, even though most of them did not fully understand why. He laughed until his chest hurt. Then he waved his hand and told his soldier to go away, and he went back to planning the ransom demand for Princess Kale. He did not think about the human teacher again. That was his first mistake. The trading station was called Dust Point. It sat at the edge of a small forgotten star system where 3 shipping lanes crossed. It was not a nice place. The lights flickered. The air smelled like engine oil and old food, and the kind of people who stopped at Dust Point were usually the kind of people who did not want to be found. Marcus Webb landed his small emergency pod in the station's lower docking bay and stepped out onto the metal floor. He had no money, no clean clothes, and no weapon. He had 3 things: a small data chip with the ship's recorded logs, a very good memory, and 34 years of understanding how people think. He walked into the station's main trading floor and looked around carefully. He needed a ship. To get a ship, he needed money or something to trade. To get something to trade, he needed information that someone here wanted. He found his answer sitting at a corner table. A heavy-set alien trader named Boar, who was loudly complaining to anyone who would listen that a shipment of his medical supplies had gone missing 3 weeks ago near the Velik shipping lane. Marcus sat down across from him. "I know where your supplies are," Marcus said quietly. Boar looked at him with small, suspicious eyes. "Who are you?" "Someone who needs a ship for 4 days," Marcus said. "I will tell you exactly where your supplies are. I will show you the flight log proof and you will lend me your smallest cargo runner. Deal." Boar stared at him for a long moment. 20 minutes later, Marcus had a ship. It was not a good ship. It was old, it was slow, and it made a sound like a sick animal every time it went into acceleration. But it worked. And for Marcus Webb, working was enough. He spent the first day in space doing one thing: studying. He pulled up every piece of public information he could find about the Vorkai raiders, their history, their old attack records, their preferred locations, every raid they had ever done that was reported somewhere. He read all of it. He took notes the same way he took notes when he was preparing a lesson plan, carefully in order, looking for patterns. And patterns were there. The raiders always hit ships near gravitational blind spots, places where sensors did not work well. They always moved their base after a big raid, but they always moved it to one of 7 specific types of locations: deep orbit around an unstable star, inside an asteroid field, near a dead space station. They liked places that other ships avoided. More importantly, and this was the part that made Marcus sit up straighter, they always used the same 3 escape routes after a raid. Always. In every recorded attack going back 19 years, creatures of habit, he thought. Even in space, he had taught his students about this once, about how even the most powerful people have patterns, and patterns are the beginning of the end for anyone who relies on them. He plotted the 3 escape routes on his navigation map. He looked at where they crossed. There was one point, a region near a dim, half-dead star called Veth, where all 3 routes passed close together. That was where the raiders were going. He set his course. On the second day, he found the scout ship. It was sitting quietly near a small moon, running with its signals turned low. The Vorkai way of watching without being seen. But Marcus had been looking for exactly this. A lone ship, small, sitting too still near a navigation point. He did not attack it. He had nothing to attack with. Instead, he did something the scout ship did not expect at all. He called them. He opened a direct channel and said in a calm and friendly voice, "Hello, I think you are watching this area for the Vorkai. I am not a threat. I just want to talk. I have something your commander will want to hear." There was a long silence. Then the channel opened. The Vorkai scout's name was Grain. He was young for a raider, barely older than some of Marcus's students back home. He came aboard Marcus's ship with his hand on his weapon the whole time. He sat down across from Marcus at the small table in the cargo bay and stared at him with hard yellow eyes. Marcus made 2 cups of something hot from the ship's old food unit and put one in front of Grain. Grain did not touch it. Marcus drank his own slowly and started talking. He did not threaten Grain. He did not try to trick him. He simply talked. He asked Grain how long he had been with the raiders. He asked what life was like on a Vorkai ship. He listened carefully when Grain answered, which, after a while, Grain started doing, almost without realizing it. This was something Marcus knew well. Most people in most situations will eventually talk to someone who truly listens. 3 hours passed. Grain's hand moved away from his weapon after the first hour. His voice got quieter and more honest after the second. By the 3rd hour, he was talking about things Marcus had not even asked about how the raiders had been getting smaller for years, about how the younger soldiers were tired, about how Commander Drac Voss made decisions that nobody questioned but many doubted. Marcus listened to all of it. Then, very gently, he asked one question. "Where are they keeping her?" Grain looked at him for a long time, then he told him. The location was a fortress built into the upper orbit of the dying star Veth, a burning, unstable giant that no normal ship would go near. The heat alone would destroy most engines within an hour. The raiders had special shielding. Nobody else did. Marcus looked at the coordinates on his screen. He thought about something he had taught Princess Kale just 2 weeks before her kidnapping. A lesson about an old human story, a war that lasted 10 years, a city with strong walls that no army could break, and one man who ended it not with strength but with a simple, clever idea. The Trojan horse. Marcus looked at his old, slow, ugly cargo ship. He looked at the coordinates. He smiled for the first time in days. Inside the nest of monsters. The star Veth was dying. It had been dying for 1,000 years, and it would probably keep dying for 1,000 more. That was the thing about dying stars, Madier. They did not go quickly. They burned and twisted and threw out waves of heat and radiation that made the space around them feel angry, like something in great pain that could not escape. Marcus flew his cargo ship straight toward it. No weapons hot, no shields raised, no aggressive signal. He was flying slow and steady, like a tired old merchant who had been in space too long and was just trying to find somewhere to stop. In the cargo hold, under 3 layers of old metal scrap and broken supply boxes, was a small black device the size of a lunchbox. It had taken him 11 hours and every useful part on the ship to build it. He was not an engineer. He was not a weapons expert. He was a teacher who had read a great deal about a great many things. Sometimes that was enough. He breathed slowly and kept flying toward the fortress. The Vorkai fortress was not beautiful. It was never meant to be. It was a dark, heavy structure built into a hollowed-out rock that floated in the upper orbit of Veth. The rock was roughly the size of a small city, and the raiders had spent years cutting into it and building their base inside. From the outside, it looked like just another dead piece of space rock drifting near a dying star. That was the point. Marcus guided his ship toward the fortress's outer docking channel. A Vorkai control voice came through his speaker almost immediately. Flat, hard, not friendly. Identify yourself and cargo. Marcus leaned toward his microphone. He had prepared this part carefully. He spoke in the trading language that most outer system merchants used. His voice was tired and slightly bored, exactly the way a real merchant's voice would sound after a long journey. Dust Point Merchant, registration 774, carrying scrap metal and salvage parts. I was told there is a buyer here for old engine components. I have 40 crates. A long silence. Then, hold position. Marcus held position. His hands were completely still on the controls. Inside his chest, his heart was doing something quite different, but he did not let that show in his voice or his hands. That was something else he had learned from years of teaching, how to look calm on the outside even when everything inside was moving fast. After 6 minutes, the control voice came back. Dock at Bay 9. Keep your ship powered down after landing. Someone will come to check your cargo. Marcus guided his ship into Bay 9. He was inside. 2 Vorkai soldiers came to check his cargo. They were big, and they moved the way all raiders moved, like they expected everything around them to be a threat. They walked through his cargo hold, kicking boxes and scanning crates with their handheld readers. They did not find the black device. Marcus had hidden it well. It was inside a broken engine casing that read as exactly what it looked like, a broken engine casing. The soldiers finished their check in 4 minutes and left without a word. Marcus waited until he could no longer hear their footsteps. Then he moved. He had memorized the basic layout of a standard Vorkai rock fortress from Grain's description. The holding cells were always in the deepest part of the base, far from the docking areas, close to the center of the rock where it was hardest to reach from outside. He moved through the back corridors quickly and quietly, staying away from the main paths where soldiers walked. The fortress was loud in its own way. The sound of machinery, of distant voices, of heavy boots on metal floors. But the back corridors were mostly empty, used for pipes and cables and maintenance work, not for soldiers. He moved like he belonged there. Head down, pace steady, not rushing, not creeping, just walking like someone doing a job. He had taught his students once about something called the gray man theory. The idea that the most invisible person in any room is not the one hiding in the shadows, but the one who simply looks like they have somewhere to be. It worked. He reached the holding level without a single soldier stopping him. The cells were behind a heavy door with a simple keypad lock. Simple for a Vorkai soldier with the right code, not simple for Marcus. He stood in front of it for 11 seconds, then he took the back panel off the keypad with a small tool from his jacket, looked at the wiring inside and crossed 2 cables that should not touch each other. The door opened. He went inside. There were 6 cells. 5 were empty. In the 6th, sitting on a metal bench with her knees pulled to her chest and her silver eyes staring at the floor, was Princess Kayla Valorn. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. For a moment she did not move. She stared at him the way someone stares at something they think might not be real. Carefully, like they are afraid that if they blink it will disappear. Then she said, in her careful, accented English, very quietly, "Marcus." "Hello, Your Highness," he said. "Sorry I am late." She stood up fast. Her legs were stiff from sitting so long, but she ignored that. She came to the cell door and grabbed the bars. "How are you here? You are a teacher, you have no weapons, you have no army." "I have something better," he said. He started working on her cell lock. "I have a plan." "What plan?" "I will explain while we move. We do not have much time." He told her about the device in the cargo hold as they moved back through the maintenance corridors. A signal disruptor, he explained. All Vorkai weapons inside this fortress were connected to the ship network. They needed a live ship signal to authorize firing. It was a security system the raiders used to make sure their own weapons could never be turned against them by captured enemies. The disruptor would kill that signal for exactly 11 minutes. No signal meant no authorized weapons. No authorized weapons meant 500 soldiers with guns that would not fire. Kyle listened carefully as they walked. Her mind was fast. It had always been fast. That was one of the things Marcus had noticed in their very first lesson together. She did not just hear information. She turned it over, looked at it from every side. 11 minutes, she said. 11 minutes. He confirmed. That is not very long. No, Marcus agreed. It is not. They reached the corridor that led back toward the docking bay. Marcus could already see the shape of his ship through the far window. 2 more minutes, and they would be there. 2 more minutes, and he could activate the device remotely, and they would have their 11 minutes to get off this rock. Then every light in the corridor went red. A loud alarm. The real kind, not the dead silence of the ship he had woken up on 3 days ago, filled every corner of the fortress. And from the speaker above his head a voice came through, deep and flat and completely calm. It was Commander Drac Voss. "Human Teacher," the voice said. "We know you are here. We have known for the last hour. Put your hands up and stay where you are. My soldiers are already surrounding your position." Marcus stopped walking. He looked at Kale. She looked back at him. Her face was not afraid, it was thinking. And then, very slowly, in the middle of the worst situation Marcus had ever been in his entire life, Princess Kale of Valorn smiled. What humans do when cornered. There is one thing that most species in the galaxy never truly understood about humans. They had studied them, some had fought them, a few had even lived beside them for years, but there was one quality, one deep, strange, almost unreasonable quality, that never made sense to anyone who was not human. Humans did not get weaker when they were cornered, they got different. Something changed in them when there was no way out, when every door was closed and every option was gone, and the only thing left was the wall behind their back. Most creatures in that situation would freeze or panic or give up. Humans did none of those things. Instead, something quiet and dangerous woke up inside them. Something old, something that had survived ice ages and famines and wars that should have ended everything. Something that looked at impossible odds and said, "Not yet." Commander Drac Voss had fought 100 species. He had never fought a human with nothing left to lose. The corridor filled with soldiers in less than 2 minutes. They came from both ends. Heavy boots on metal floor, weapons raised, faces hidden behind dark visors. 20 soldiers. Then 30. Then more coming. They formed a wall on both sides of Marcus and Kale, leaving no space, no gap, no possible direction to run. Marcus stood completely still. Kale stood beside him, her silver eyes moving slowly across the soldiers, counting, calculating, her face showing nothing. Then Commander Drac Voss himself walked through the line of soldiers and stopped 10 feet away from them. He was even larger up close than Marcus had imagined, broad and heavy, with old scars crossing his face like a map of every fight he had ever won. He looked at Marcus the way a person looks at something small and harmless that has somehow ended up somewhere it should never have been. "Human Teacher," Drac Voss said slowly, tasting the words like they were strange in his mouth. "You came alone. You had no weapons. You had no army. You walked into my fortress with a cargo ship and a plan." He paused. "I almost respect it." "Almost," Marcus said. "Almost." Drac Voss agreed. "You are brave. I will kill you slowly out of respect." Marcus nodded once, like a man who had just been told something he already expected. Then he looked at Kyle. She looked back at him, and she smiled first. What Commander Drac Voss did not know, what none of his soldiers knew, was that the conversation Marcus and Kale had while walking through the maintenance corridors had lasted longer than Marcus told it. He had explained the signal disruptor. Yes. But he had also told Kale something else. He had told her where the device was hidden in the cargo hold. He had told her the exact sequence to activate it remotely using the small emergency communicator on her wrist. The one the raiders had not taken because it looked like a simple piece of jewelry. He had told her all of this in the corridor, quietly, while they walked. And then he had told her one more thing. "If we get separated, do not wait for me. Activate the device. The weapons will go down for 11 minutes. Use every second. Cale had looked at him and said, I will not leave without you. Marcus had smiled and said, Your Highness, I am your teacher. When I give you an assignment, I expect it to be completed. While Drac Voss was speaking, while his soldiers stood in their perfect walls on both sides, while every eye in the corridor was on Marcus, Cale's fingers moved, slowly, quietly, the way Marcus had taught her to do things she did not want anyone to notice, calmly, without hurry, like it was not important. Her thumb pressed the small hidden button on the inside of the wrist communicator. The signal disruptor in the cargo hold activated. For exactly half a second, nothing happened. Then every weapon in the fortress went dark. The sound it made was small, just a soft click, repeated across 500 weapons at the same time, like 500 small locks closing all at once. The soldiers looked at their weapons, confused. Some pressed triggers and nothing happened. Some hit the sides of their guns with their palms the way people hit broken machines, hoping it would help. It did not help. Drac Voss looked at his own weapon, then he looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back at him with a calm, steady expression. 11 minutes, Marcus said quietly. That is how long your weapons will not work. I would like to suggest we use that time to talk. Drac Voss was not a stupid creature. He was brutal, and he was dangerous, and he had made a great many terrible choices in his life. But he was not stupid. He understood immediately what had happened. He understood that the human teacher had outsmarted him. He understood that his weapons were down, and that in 11 minutes they would be back and he could end this quickly. So he crossed his arms and he waited. Talk, he said. Marcus reached into his jacket and took out a small data tablet. He turned it on and held it up so Drac Voss could see the screen. On it was a live feed, a broadcast that had been running for the last 40 minutes across 17 major galaxy news networks. Everything that had happened in this corridor had been broadcasting live to the galaxy. Every word Drac Voss had said, every threat, every moment of a 7-foot raider commander standing in front of one unarmed human teacher and one young princess. It had all been seen by millions of people across a dozen star systems. Drac Voss stared at the screen. His face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. You were transmitting, he said. From the moment I docked, Marcus said. The cargo ship system was set up to broadcast everything through the 3 nearest relay stations. I am not a weapons expert. I am not a soldier. He lowered the tablet slowly. But I am a teacher, and teachers know that the most powerful thing in any room is not the biggest weapon, it is information. Behind Drac Voss, something was happening among the soldiers. It started small, 2 soldiers near the back lowering their useless weapons, then 3 more, then a group near the left wall stepping back slightly, not running, just stepping back, putting small distance between themselves and what was happening. These were not loyal soldiers following a cause they believed in. Marcus had learned this from Grain. The raiders had been shrinking for years. The younger soldiers had joined for safety, not for glory. They had never signed up to be the villains in a live broadcast seen by millions. Drac Voss turned and looked at his soldiers. They did not look back at him the way soldiers look at a commander they trust. He turned back to Marcus. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, slowly, like a very heavy thing, finally setting itself down, Commander Drac Voss uncrossed his arms. He did not put his hands up. He was too proud for that. But he stepped to the side. He moved out of the path between Marcus and the docking bay, and he did not stop them when Marcus put his hand gently on Cale's shoulder, and they walked forward. The soldiers parted. Nobody moved to stop them. They flew away from Veth in Marcus's old cargo ship, the engine still making its sick animal sound, the stars slowly getting brighter as they moved away from the dying star's angry light. Kyle sat in the co-pilot seat and looked out at the stars for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "You knew they would not stop us." "I hoped," Marcus said. "That is not the same thing." "No," he agreed. "It is not." She was quiet again. Then, "You could have died." "Yes. You are a teacher. You had no reason to come." Marcus thought about that for a moment. He looked at the stars ahead of them, clean and bright and going on forever. "You were my student," he said simply. That was reason enough. 3 days later, they landed on Valorn. The king met them at the landing platform with 100 royal guards and a crowd of people behind them that stretched as far as Marcus could see. There were lights and sounds and people calling Cale's name in their language, a sound like wind chimes and deep bells mixed together. Cale walked to her father and they held each other for a long time without speaking. Then the king turned to Marcus. He was tall and silver-eyed like his daughter, and when he looked at Marcus, it was with the kind of look that goes all the way through a person. Name your reward, the king said. Anything in my power, it is yours. Marcus thought about it honestly. He thought about money and ships and titles. He thought about all the things a person could ask for after doing what he had done. Then he looked at Kyle, who was watching him with those quick, calculating silver eyes that had already understood 3 things he had not said yet. Let me keep teaching her, Marcus said. She is a good student, she still has a lot to learn. Cale made a sound that was very close to a laugh. I figured out your device before you could activate it yourself. You did, Marcus agreed. Which means you are ahead of the lesson plan and I need to work harder. She laughed then, a real laugh, loud and sudden, the kind that comes out when something is genuinely funny and the person laughing has been holding their breath for a very long time. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. Somewhere across the galaxy the story was already spreading. Not the official version, not the royal announcement or the military report. The real story. The one that traveled from ship to ship and station to station and trading post to trading post the way real stories always travel. The story of a human teacher. Alone. No weapons. No army. No special powers. Who walked into the most dangerous fortress in 12 star systems. And walked back out with the princess. People told it differently depending on where they heard it. Some versions made Marcus braver. Some made the fortress bigger. Some changed the details in ways that made the ending even more dramatic. But every version ended the same way, with a human who did not stop. Because that, everyone agreed, was the most believable part. The end.